So thank you so much for joining on a Thursday evening. My name is Sadar. I lead growth and partnerships at Baselane. And I'm actually really, really excited about this conversation. So Tom Higgins is with us today. He's actually been associated with Baselane through one of our VPs, and he's spoken with internally with our company before and all of our employees. And so Tom is co-founder and managing partner of Terra Capital. In addition to that, he's also managed over, I think, about or over 2,500 rental property units in the U.S., where as a multifamily operator, he's been able to not only work on the development side, but also the development and renovation, and also the management. And what we're going to be talking a lot about today with Tom is how can he, educate us, all of us that are managing single or multifamily properties, on how to automate and scale. And so that's a quick introduction. I will let Tom say hello and hi to everybody and introduce himself as well. So Tom, maybe you could say a quick word, and then we'll jump into just getting started with the program.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate everybody coming out. Um, I think the intro is perfect. I would just say I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to real estate, prop tech optimization. So I'm excited for this conversation. I think we're at a very, very interesting inflection point in real estate management. Why that might not excite everybody. It excites me. And I think there's a lot of power out there today with the intersection of process, prop tech, offshore resources, and machine learning, ChatGPT, that type of stuff. So I'm excited to get into it.
Awesome, awesome. Same here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I think we have a mix of people here that are familiar with Baselane and others that are not familiar with Baselane. So we are gonna spend just a quick minute here talking a little bit about what is Baselane, and then we're gonna jump into specific questions that we have prepared for Tom. While I'm doing this, I would love for people to go ahead and add comments if you like. Any questions that you have, feel free to add those in the chat, and I'll do my best as we're going through the entire program to, include anything that specifically you like to learn. So go ahead and do that while I talk a little bit about Baselane. And so for those that are unfamiliar with Baselane, Baselane is really first of its kind. It's an all-in-one banking and financial platform that helps real estate investors thrive. And we serve all types of real estate investors: long-term, short-term, midterm rental. And, we've got a couple of core products that I want to quickly talk about. So we have a digital business checking account, and we were the first to create this type of product, which is 100% dedicated to real estate investors. And I get this question a lot, like, hey, I already have this, so why do I need Baselane? It's because Baselane is built with a lot of really amazing features that allow you to organize your banking in a way that helps you automate your bookkeeping. It helps you streamline that entire financial workflow of reconciling income and expenses and tagging those things on the bookkeeping side. We have super high APY in the banking accounts as well, which is unheard of, really. In addition to that, we built property management tools like rent collection. We just recently added the ability to manage maintenance orders, where you can kind of find a vendor and hire them. We have lease creation and e-sign in the platform. We've built our own bookkeeping and accounting software 100% dedicated to real estate investors only. And that's my favorite part, because it really helps you automate, 70, 80% of the day-to-day things you have to keep track of. And of course, we have the tenant management side as well, where there's a tenant portal and things like that. So that's a very quick high-level overview of Baselane. So if you're the first time hearing about Baselane, come check us out at www.baselane.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, and Candice, who's helping me out in the background, or I will be able to address your questions. Okay, so that is a very quick introduction. I see some more people coming in, so let me just go ahead and add that. And I think we're going to just jump right into it here. All right, so I see people are starting to add your questions. So uh, please go ahead and continue to do that, and we'll do our best to get to all of those. So yeah, I think basically our kind of thinking around this was, Tom, to just talk a little bit about your background, just learn a little bit more about, you know,
Sure.
how you got into real estate and all of that, and then we'll
Sure.
get more into questions around different aspects of management and technology and digitization, as you mentioned. There's new components like offshore, AI, machine learning, and so on as well. So maybe before we go deeper, like tell us a little bit about yourself, like where are you from, how did you get involved in real estate, and
Sure.
what does the world look like to you today?
Yeah, no, happy to. I grew up in New York City. I went to Columbia University for college. It's when I got started in real estate. I started as a real estate agent, renting apartments in between classes and on weekends. And then I got into a few internships while I was at school, leveraged that to work for one of the largest family offices in New York City called Rose Associates. They do ground up development in New York, large projects. They're one of the largest managers in New York City. So I did adaptive reuse for them. So development management, construction management, very much on the project team side. I went and worked for Lennar Corporation. For Lennar, I did urban infill ground up development. So think Jersey City, and I know many of you are familiar with New York, like in Jersey City and White Plains and Stamford, Connecticut, commuter towns, digging big holes in the ground and building large buildings. I started my own real estate investment firm, not focusing on urban infill development, but rather buying kind of more probably what your typical customer would buy. Call it a 10 unit rental building, a 20 unit rental building, a 50 unit, a 70 unit, a 60 unit, a duplex, a single family home. We started really being opportunistic, buying sub institutional, putting anywhere from call it 30,000 to $50,000 a door in renovations in place. Our typical purchase price is probably call it 100 grand. And that's really what we've been focused on for a number of years now. We are in Pittsburgh, Columbus, and Indianapolis. We own a property management company. We self-manage all our buildings. We also have third-party clients. We have over 560 units on our investment platform now, and then about another third that are third party management clients. And we've been growing and kind of taking advantage of some great buying opportunities while interest rates have been high. And yeah, that's what we focus on.
Awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And I've got a lot of sub follow-up questions there, but very impressed. And I know we talked about like 2 years ago, and I think you guys have also grown a lot since then. So that's really awesome to see. Um, I guess maybe we can talk a little bit about the asset class so we can contextualize it for folks. And for people that are listening, I'd love for you to also go ahead and tell us what you own, what kind of properties do you own? Is it, single family, multifamily? Where are they in the US? Just tell us a little bit more about yourself. So folks, go ahead and do that. Tell us a little bit about the city you're in or state and like what kind of units you invest in. And I guess Tom, how did you get to that asset class? You mentioned, small multifamily, but you've also done like larger units. So how did you
Yeah,
decide that, and what did you mean by sub-institutional?
sure. Yeah. Um, I don't want to say I'm contrarian by any means, but I built large properties. And when you're going out to build your own business, I didn't have very high conviction that institutional urban infill development worked during a higher interest rate environment. It was already
Hmm.
so difficult to get deals to pencil while I was at one of the best companies that does development, right? They have the lowest cost of capital, they have the best contractor relationships, they have the best buying power, they can put up massive, massive deposits in the blink of an eye. I'm going out to start my own real estate investment firm. One, I don't have that firepower, but two, it's like, even if I had that firepower, do these deals really make sense? Are the returns really there? Like if you look at the dollar figures you could make, they are big numbers, but on a percent basis, I didn't feel very confident in the returns. So I instead kind of took a zoomed out approach, and I had always been investing in smaller real estate deals really since college. And I always was very kind of shocked by the return profile in these smaller deals. Like you can really buy a great 10 unit off market, renovate it, rent it up, refinance it, or sell it, and you can do pretty well. So my thought was, what are the best markets to do that? And that's a whole, we could get into how we
Yeah.
select markets. But that was really the process I had. It's like, where is the buying pressure? Where are the people that have the most capital? It's really in this institutional space. What does that mean for me? 140 units or above is typically the line in the sand. Depends a
Mm,
little bit on your price per unit and stuff like that, but generally speaking, that's kind of a good line in the sand. So when I say sub-institutional, what I am really referring to is, well below 100 units. Really, I like to
right.
focus in that 20, 30 unit world. I kind of maybe
Mm,
10, 20, 30 units is really the sweet spot. And it's too big for a typical house flipper, but way
right.
too small for an institutional investor. And that's really where we focus and thrive. And what we do is we build, and we'll get into this, like the importance of scale and the importance of size and the importance of systems. But we built a pretty good process to drive efficiency in a theoretical inefficient space.
That's awesome. That's super helpful. And before we jump into some of those things, because I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is the whole point of that is to generate a certain type of return, right? So, very high level quickly, we're not going to get into the markets today. That's not focus
Yeah.
of the conversation. But what is the sort of target return, or I guess what are the metrics that you look at?
Yeah.
And what are you optimizing for when we talk about scale and property management and all of that stuff?
Okay. Let's start with that first one, and then maybe we could, if you could just ask that second part again. But
Sure.
the return metrics that we're looking for, I always like to view things on an unlevered basis.
Okay. So no
So
debt. That's what that
no
means,
debt.
right?
I always,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I like to look at things on a no leverage basis because the debt markets kind of come and go, but I like the real estate fundamentals to be sound. So what
Okay.
I am laser focused on is what is my stabilized net operating income divided by the total cost that it took me to get it stabilized. So what did I buy it
Right.
for? What did I renovate it for? What did I hire the architect for? What did I pay the leasing consultant? How much money did I have to spend during carry? That whole total cost at the bottom is super important, right? Because time is very relevant in that.
Right.
So that's what we called our untrended, unlevered yield on cost. And that's the metric we're laser focused on.
Okay. And for folks that don't know, we won't get into the definitions. You can go to our website and look up what is NOI, right? And net operating income. Basin actually allows you to compute NOI, right, without doing anything. It's already built for you. So you can go there and take a look at what that means, but that's super helpful. So you look at the stabilized NOI and over just all in cost
Correct.
from the time you bought the property to
Correct.
doing all the work, fixing it up, renting it out, improving the
Correct.
rents, all the
Yes,
way to stabilizing it basically.
exactly right.
Okay. And is there a range that you play in? I guess that depends
Yeah,
on the market as well.
it does depend on the market. There's kind of like that buy box, right? Where you're like a 7% yield on cost in a class A neighborhood in a great market. In a
Mm,
class B neighborhood, it's an 8.5. Class C neighborhood, we're going in the nines and tens,
right,
if not higher. So we
right,
really like to focus in, like, my ideal deal is class B neighborhood in the path of progress. That's an 8.5. Our portfolio today is trending right around 8.4. And I think we have a
right,
nice mix of those
right.
class
Okay.
B locations in the path of progress.
Right. So that's super important. And now we're going to talk about, how do we automate things and all of this. So, I mean, just at a very high level, when you started doing this, and obviously you had been in the real estate business for a while, what was your mindset and philosophy? Because you said nerd out about, some of these things.
For
What was your
sure.
mindset around this, right? Because when we think about property management, it's scary, it's annoying, right? It's painful at times. It's kind of that thing that is super hard to do, and everybody struggles with it, right? Whether you have it self-managed or property. So how were you thinking about it when you started?
Oh man, I started a long time ago. I think if I knew how hard it was, I may never have done it. But we're here now. So
Yeah.
I think in the beginning we were in a very good position because we had very my business partner and I had very demanding W-2 jobs. All right.
Okay. So full-time jobs, like a lot of
Full
people on the
time.
call right now. Okay.
Full-time job. So we had no time. So we had to create from the beginning a
Hmm.
process that could scale, but more importantly, didn't require high touch from us. So that was our motivation. Conveniently, that's actually a nice way to create the beginning of a property management company, real estate operational business. Um,
Right.
Not just throwing humans at the problem, right? There's this big propensity in the management space. Everyone always complains, like property management's like break even or you run negative and all this stuff, because there's a high propensity for property management companies to throw humans at the problem.
Right.
It psychologically is easier for a lot of us to be like, okay, we're going to hire Mark or we're going to hire Sally, and that's going to throw that person's time at this problem, and then okay, we can go away. We've taken such an extreme different approach to that, where it's like, how much can we stretch that one mark by providing prop tech and offshore resources and systems and check-ins and like really, squeezing all the value out of our human capital as humanly possible. And I'm
Okay.
happy to get into specifics on how we
Awesome.
do that.
Okay, that's really helpful and that's super important because I think it came out of that desperation, that need to have that because you didn't have the time. And I think a lot of us have day jobs while we're investing. We've got families and kids and all
For
this
sure.
stuff. So definitely time is very limited. And so that's
Yes.
super important. The way we thought about it, and I'm happy to think about it a little bit differently, is I kind of want to just go through the process of a regular renter property, listing to leasing to, managing.
Sure.
So we could talk about the deal search part, but I'm not sure if that we have time for that. But
Yep.
we wanted to start with leasing, listing as the first category. How do you manage that today, and what are
Yeah.
the things that you automate in that process?
Yeah. So I can definitely help there. So I mean, leasing's come such a long way. It's pretty incredible. Like from, I mean, not to be dramatic, but like from classifieds in the
Yeah,
newspaper, with the phone number where you're calling to go see the rental in the walk-up building, you're meeting the rental agent outside, and like you're going up and you're keying into the apartment and you're seeing it, right?
right.
That's like the extreme version of like inefficient process. The complete opposite of that is, let's just pretend there's a scenario where you renovate every property the same way. Your finishes are all the same. Your units all look alike. Okay. You have a new listing coming up. You have a new project that you're finishing. Everything is done perfectly. The place is clean, and you're done. What we do is we have a Schlagen code, right? It's the lock. We've tried all of them. It's our favorite. Well, not all of them. We've tried a lot of them. It's our favorite. We put a Schlagen code lock on. The building has Wi-Fi, right? And well, let me back up a little bit further. That's the physical infrastructure. That is all the prop tech physically that we need installed in the building is a Schlage lock and Wi-Fi. If we've achieved that, now we can run our whole process, which we've automated to rent that unit. And so what we do is through our whatever prop tech software we're using, whether it's RealPage, Buildium, Appfolio, etc., we have that whole listing done, all the photos done, the description done, everything already completed as part of our project. Now we want to go lease the unit. We click the button, we push those listings out to every of the pre-approved listing services. So if it goes on apartments.com, it goes on Zillow, it goes on rent.com, whatever the ones in the market that you're operating in are the best to list on, and that integrate with the software, right? It's important to pick software that fits your market, and they already have those integrations in place. All right, so that happens. Now we have a phone number on there, and we have an offshore management team that monitors whether it's that Zillow account or whether it's that apartments.com account. They monitor that. So they get a phone call, and they are phenomenal English speakers that know they have a playbook for about the property. They can answer questions quickly, and they're like, "Hey, we're happy to schedule a tour. Your options are as follows. You can do a self-guided tour at your convenience between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. You can do a virtually guided tour where one of our representatives will guide you through the property. Or we can coordinate a time for you to have a real estate agent meet you, or someone from our team to meet you on
On site.
on site. Exactly. And no one ever picks option three. Everyone's always picking option one and option two. It is important to
Wow.
provide that option three, because there's a psychological, we've learned over time, there's a psychological component to like, oh, they don't have humans, or they don't have, they're like sterile, right? You got to avoid that. So by providing that option three, it's also a nice way to screen tenants, because like we want the 22 to 35-year-old that has an iPhone that is like comfortable using technology and doing a guided tour or self-guided tour. So it's a nice way to kind of limit that, and we focus really
Mm.
on those tenants. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. So there were
and we
some
used
questions.
Tenant Turner for a while, and then we didn't
Mm,
love it, so we kind of just brought the process in-house, and we just
got
do
it.
it with FaceTime or Google Meet meetings, or just really kind of
Off
slaps
the
things
shelf stuff.
together. Yeah.
Okay. One quick key question before I move to the next part of this. You mentioned there's a self-guided tour and there's a virtual guided tour. How many pictures do you take of the property? Like, what's your process for that to
So
do that virtual?
what we've been doing is we do a Matterport. So we'll do
Oh,
a
Matterport 360. Okay.
yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's really great. And they're not that expensive, right? They're only a couple of $100
Yeah, we
for,
we kind of pay for the turnkey option. There
okay.
are definitely cheaper ways to do it. You
Okay.
could you could definitely, buy. I've seen a few other technologies that you can buy it and do it yourself, and it's not as good as Matterport, but it's 80% there.
Right, right. Okay.
And it's something
Uh,
we've thought about doing. It's just like, you got to pick your list of things to focus on.
yeah. And one other thing I've noticed is like when you get a leasing agent in, some of them are good, some of them are not good in terms of selling and closing. And somebody asked this question in the chat. You mentioned the team offshore has a playbook.
Correct.
So just very quickly, like what is that and what are the kind of structures like what do you guys have in there?
You know, like we I've I've found that people really just want authenticity and not salesy.
Hmm.
So it's like, hi, how can I help you? Oh, blah blah blah. Yes, I have that information. I'm happy to provide it to you. And then you give
Okay.
them the information. It's like very it's we've tried a lot of different things, but like just being responsive, like it's so much of it, like having enough offshore humans during the leasing season, right? Like we have hundreds of units that come up for lease in the summer months. Every most operators do, and very often they're not staffed appropriately to get responses within 4 minutes or 2 minutes or 1 minute. So having the ability to kind of like staff up and staff down
Hmm.
through offshore resources, right? VAs, etc. I think it's the response time and then the information, right? So when you finish the building, when you've renovated this building, like write everything down that you did. Like here's the door, here's the other door, here's the appliance in the unit. Like if you just document that when you complete your project, now this person that's in the Philippines, like it feels like they're there. They have the 3D video of, they have the 3D walkthrough of the property. They have the description of the property. Like they know more about it than most real estate agents that would walk into it physically. So
Right. And they can zoom in and out with Matterport.
yeah,
They can
zoom
see the
in.
everything. Yeah.
They could
Awesome.
tell you the color of the tile in the corner. No rental agent's going to be able to do that. Oh, when you
Yeah.
walk into the unit, the door opens to the right. So just be careful, the light's on the left. Like you can get
Okay.
pretty into it.
Awesome. Let's move to the next part about application tenant screening. So,
Yeah.
what's your approach there? Do you have a preferred software? Baselane today doesn't have one yet. We're thinking of building that actually for the people that are out there and wondering. We're working on that actually right now to figure out what we're going to do. But how are you, as a larger operator, managing that part?
We've considered kind of like upgrading this function of us. There's been some lease fraud in our markets. We've only dealt with it one time, and it was kind of really low drama. So it hasn't been an immediate need for us. So what we've done so far is we've just used the ones that are kind of on the system on,
Available.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
understood. Okay.
Zillow now has a built-in one, and we do a lot of renting through Zillow. And so we've changed our protocol to accept the Zillow one um too, to kind of like reduce
Okay.
cost burden and stuff like that.
Understood. Yeah, I personally have had to be a little bit more careful now because we've had like some income reporting fraud and stuff like that too. I don't know if you've come across
Just
that.
one time. Just one
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of, so Baseline is going through that process now to figure out what vendor we're going to be plugging into.
Yeah, let
Okay.
me know when you pick one.
Yeah, we'll let you know. From there, so we've got like digital listings, virtual showings, or self-guided tours with a Matterport type software. There's a 3D scanning, and you have keyless entry. Oh, you already mentioned that with the.
Virtual staging is huge. Virtual staging is like,
Okay, so we missed that part. So virtual staging, can you tell us a little bit about what is that and how do you do it?
yeah, so you get professional photos done. You upload that, there's a handful of softwares out there. You upload the photos, and now the AI is to the point where it will auto generate the furniture within the space.
Awesome,
Um,
amazing. Okay, okay,
and we were looking for a while. The it's a little like not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's pretty
okay,
good. And
awesome. That's
you can hire like in design like people to do it as well, which we've done, but the AI one's pretty good,
awesome. Okay, that's amazing.
which is huge.
Uh,
Like no one does this. So you're setting your listings apart right away. Like it's crazy.
that's really good. And then so when you move to the lease signing and onboarding part of it, how does
Yeah.
that process work?
That's all done through leasing coordinators in the Philippines. So we have our form leases that's all already uploaded. Sorry, I have to sneeze. It's already uploaded into. Ooh, okay, it's already
Bless you.
updated. Thank you. It's already up to one of the blessings of having children. It's one of it's already uploaded into our software. So we
Okay,
have, it's like Adobe. You can do it with Adobe too. There's a handful of them. Adobe's like the simplest one. You probably already have Adobe, and then you can just like build a form in Adobe. And now Adobe has like the DocuSign function that,
okay. So you could
so
send it over and
yeah, we
get it
spend
signed and
like,
e-signed.
I don't know
Okay,
what, some crazy amount of money on Adobe subscriptions, and we got rid of all our DocuSign ones
okay.
because it allows you to do all the signing like that.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Today, for the folks that are wondering, Baseline, we have integration with Rocket Lawyer, but we only allow their leases. We're working on something that eventually will allow you to upload your own lease and e-sign as well. So yeah, there's other options. Well, there's a question in the chat about virtual, the staging. Is there, I know there's multiple softwares. Is there a favorite one that you have that you like or?
Honestly, I don't know the name. I'll message my team and ask.
Yeah. Yeah. I've used one too. Like there's so many. You can download the app on your phone
There's
and
a lot
try
of
it out.
bad ones.
Yeah, the easiest way
We've
to do
tried
this
them
is
all.
try it. Yeah, try it with a room in your house and see how it goes, right?
Yeah,
It's super
I'll
easy.
message him and I'll find out.
Yeah.
What is the virtual staging?
Yeah.
So
So maybe I'll quickly talk about rent collection security deposit. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward. I know you have a larger set of units. So you mentioned some other softwares. So I'm assuming you're doing online rent collection through one of those platforms.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna jump over that one because that's a pretty simple step. I don't think there's a
One
lot of.
thing I would
Yeah.
add, I mean, just to
Yeah.
be a little helpful here, again, this goes out to process and systems. Like when I was a renter in a related building, right? And related is one of the best property managers just ever. They're phenomenal.
Okay.
Um, there, and I was late on paying my rent because of it was a Sunday or a Monday or whatever. Their speed of um following up, it's just so, this goes back to just like, is if there's a process in place and there's humans to do the job in an efficient way, the chances that you're successful as a manager is so much higher. They called me, they texted me 24 hours after the rent wasn't paid. They emailed me 36 hours, and then they called me 48 hours, and then I paid the thing. It's like having some human to like really be diligent, whether they're using automation, whether you're using automation within your software, or you're just outsourcing a process, just being very clear with, it's been 1 day, it's been 5 days, it's been 15 days. This is what you do day 1. This is what you do day 5. This is what you do day 15. Here's the form document that you use on day 15. Here's the lawyer's contact that you would notify if on day 16 they haven't paid to start eviction process. And then you always allow room for exceptions. You always allow room for payment plans. You always allow room for like working with people. But as long as your system has that optionality built in, now you can scale, right? Because now, okay, I just signed up another 100 units. I need another person in the Philippines helping us to do collections. Here's the playbook in Google Drive or Google Docs with the process document. They can go in, they know what to do. They give me or our team a report on this day of the month, this day of the month, this day of the month. So it's just having those processes in place and lower cost labor allows you to scale.
That's super helpful. And I think with rent collection, you kind of really honed in on the right thing, which is all about the collection part of it. It's not necessarily a tool that is the difficult part. And so you explained a little bit about that. So do you have, it sounds like you have VAs or offshore staff that is following up directly with those tenants.
100%.
Okay, awesome. And are they use email, SMS, I guess, combination of things to reach out to them?
It's automated in our system.
Okay,
3 days, a week before rent's due, 3 days before rent's due. Like, hey, your rent's due in a week. Hey, your rent's due in X amount of days. This is the amount. Here's the bill.
right,
Then, day after rent's not paid, like one day, you get a notice like late rent payment. If it's not paid by X time, you get a late fee.
right,
Then on day 5, that's when the human gets involved. So on day 5, they send a personal email from their email. It's all, pre-done, but it's a personal email.
template, yeah,
They make a phone call. If they can't get them on the phone, they follow up with a text message and a voicemail. Then there's a grace period to hear back. And then if it's been that whole grace period with consistent follow-up, and
right.
day 15, you start the other process.
Eviction, eviction
Or
process. Okay,
whatever.
awesome.
Yeah, it depends
Yeah,
on the
whatever that is.
market.
The
It depends
notice
on
to
the thing.
quit or things
Yes.
like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I guess one question here, now we're getting to the management part of it, right? And before we get into maintenance and things like that, since you have a lot of the folks online and some of them are offshore, how do you do things that are more, physical in nature that require somebody to be on site or in person? How does that work? So, for example, like notice to quit postings, many cities require you to post it on the door, take a picture of it, and
Yeah.
send a letter or something,
Yeah.
right? So, how do you handle that part?
So that's in a lot of ways the hardest part. And it takes time and money and experience and relationships and presence and conviction and all these things. Um, my experience, and it's kind of sad to say, but you gotta just keep kind of going through 1099s depending on your scale, right? So if you have less than 100 units, like you're never gonna hire a W-2, right?
Right,
It's gonna
right,
be a handyman type, it's gonna be a contractor type, it's gonna be a 1099 type person. Maybe they're a handyman, maybe they are a contractor, maybe they're a plumber, maybe they're an electrician, whatever. And you're going to hire those types of people, and they're going to work with you. You could have what we call gophers. So you could have like very low skilled labor, and then you could kind of have your higher skilled labor handyman person. You're paying them a little bit more an hour. And then what you do is you kind of always have to feel out the people that are working for you. Like if you have the best, most trustworthy, phenomenal person that is $10 an hour, right? That doesn't exist, but just as an example, then maybe you keep your process in place, but you compromise in your software that you're using. If I have this phenomenal person in Columbus, but like they don't want to download an app and they don't want to do
right.
that process. Okay, so why do I require this app? I require this app so that they get notified, they can communicate with the tenant and things go smoothly, right? If that person's not using the app, the system breaks. So either I can fire that person and find somebody else that will follow my rules, or I have to adapt the tools to achieve my process. So we
Okay.
are process first. We are not tool forcing first. And so because of the use of VAs and the lower cost labor, we're able to still facilitate coordination via text message. So we
Okay.
can use text message, and then our internal staff uses our software to still interface with the tenant, but they're coordinating in the medium that our staff in the markets need. Because very often, if you're in Nebraska or what, really anywhere, even New York City, the best people are often not the most tech enabled.
They may not be the tech savvy.
So
That's helpful. Okay.
you gotta adapt your process to work with them. It'd be great if I had a AI engine that was an app that was like perfect communication. I needed no coordination and I'm done. Like they hire the person for me, they renovate the unit for me, and everything's gone. But I've been doing this for so long. It's just that execution risk is so high. Hey, have the best tools, use as an option for when you get that 25-year-old handyman that loves technology. But the reality is like I need something that works with a 60-year-old guy who's got a flip phone. So
Yeah.
that's how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's a good transition into two topics. So utilities, and we kind of are going back a little bit, utilities management and setup, and then maintenance. Well, last time I spoke to you, I think you mentioned you were using new utility, for
Yeah, that went
example.
terribly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was bad. So we kind of learned our lesson for the like fifth time doing something like that. What I My experience with Nutility was like, hey, they are going. I thought it was the offshore outsource solution to utility management, and that's what they
Hmm.
sell. That's what they kind of are. The issue, and this is something I like, about Baselane and something that you guys are doing. Like you guys are finance first, right? So like you were like, hey, what do landlords need from a banking standpoint to do their job well and get a money market, like get this return and also have a very well set up banking system. Nutility didn't go finance first. They basically use their operating account, pay all your utility bills, and then send you a bill. And what's bad about that
Hmm.
is that, say a tenant doesn't pay, it's going to come right out of your pocket as a landlord. And that's very problematic from an operational standpoint. You need that letter from the city that says, hey, your tenant hasn't paid, to kind of motivate the team to like make sure that that tenant then pays, and not like it hit right out of our bank account from an operational standpoint day one. So that was where
Okay.
we tried to outsource to a company theoretical software to solve a problem where in reality we should have built a process, and now we've built a process. And so
Okay.
now
So do you,
we have a
okay.
utility management kind of protocol. And it's very time consuming and it's difficult, to be
Okay.
candid. It's one of the
So
hardest
you,
things from a kind of a tinkering management standpoint to nail.
okay. So you have your own process to get a new tenant set up with the utilities and make sure they're, set up to pay for it, basically.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's like you
okay.
have to be extraordinarily detail oriented. So every time you set up a new building, you need to like get every single meter number. You have to get every account number for those meters. You have to get the passwords to log into all those account numbers. And when you're dealing with these different utility companies, it's
Yeah.
very difficult to kind of do that expeditiously, right? You got to be on hold for 2 hours. And then
Right.
like, oh, the password's not working. Okay, they don't have a password reset button. Oh, their website's down. Like it can create a barrier, a administrative barrier that's so high that like if you don't have a process and like someone kind of partially dedicated to figuring that out. Again, this is with scale, right? It's hundreds and
Yeah.
hundreds
You're
of
talking about hundreds
units,
of units. Yeah.
and many, many, many properties. It can get kind of out of hand. So
Understood.
the data entry up front is like 80-90% of it.
That's critical. Okay. That's
Yeah.
helpful. How do you, now the big question, how do you manage maintenance? What's your philosophy about maintenance management? How is your lease set up related to that? And then how do you guys actually execute when somebody has like a plumbing leak, that sink is messed up or some
Yeah.
issue like that?
Yeah, so we use the internal software, right? So there's a maintenance order that comes in, then that gets assigned to one of our service team members. If for whatever reason that service team member isn't great with integrating with our software, which we do have in some areas, there's a assistant project manager or assistant property manager that's assigned to it, and then they are the ones that do the coordination and follow up.
Okay.
We do maintenance coordination. We've tried some of the softwares out there. We always like will try a new maintenance coordination software on a building or two to see if it like solves all our problems. We have yet to really find something that has checked that box 100%. I'm optimistic that it's the tech is getting there. Like I think that especially if there's some way to do like machine learning integration into like creating work orders and service requests and making sure you get all the specifics. I'm excited about the future of that. I don't have a silver bullet today. What I can tell you is, the CRMs are helpful. You can, what's nice sometimes is you can kind of compare your different areas and see like who's doing well, who's not doing well, and then it might
Mm,
show you a little bit of color about the underlying team. um but I think it comes down to the manager. Like it is our responsibility. Like ultimately our residents are our customers, like especially in the property management business. Bigger you are, longer you're there, and that should be the goal of, and really anyone that's managing buildings should be like, let me be the best version of this. It requires discipline, it requires firing a lot of people, it requires finding good people, it requires staffing appropriately, staffing
mm.
up, staffing down. It's not, I think it's the hardest part of the business. And I have noticed like when I first got into this property management game, I was like overworked. I was just a little frustrated, I would say, with the whole concept of property management and like how it was just a thankless business. And I felt like we were trying hard, but it wasn't working. And then I don't know, at some point, I had a switch go off, and it's like, you honestly, like, this is where people live. You have to take pride in providing nice areas for people to live. By no means is that going to be easy. And by no means you may never succeed in that, because if there's a leak in the parapet wall on the 32nd floor of a building and the leaks in the 8th floor apartment, it may take you months to realize that it's coming through a storm drain, 500 linear feet through a building and pouring out into this sweet old lady's living room. So like you may not be able to do it instantaneously, but I have noticed that like in our business, if the top people truly are motivated to do the best possible job, it trickles through the whole organization.
That's super helpful. Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's surprising. Like it is one of the hardest parts of property management, as you have mentioned. I guess related to that, how do you um, find the good people that you mentioned? Is it just trial and error? Do you have a
Yeah.
process for
Yeah.
finding, recruiting, vetting
Yeah. So
contractors, plumbers, so on?
we've tried a lot of it. We've had great success with ZipRecruiter.
Mhm.
Um, I just interestingly enough, we've gotten some of our best people from ZipRecruiter. I think literally
Okay.
all our best people have been from ZipRecruiter.
Are those
Um,
1099s or what's the?
yeah, pretty much all 1099s. It's kind of a nice way to find a person that might have some stuff going on, but they're looking for more work. Um,
Okay.
and it's a nice way to find handyman. But the truth of the matter, and it's also we've used it to find contractors too.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but
That's
and
helpful.
but you have to remember ZipRecruiter pushes out to tons of sites, right? So it's like you don't necessarily,
Listed.
yeah, you
Yeah,
don't necessarily know what route you're getting that inbound from. Like I don't know where ZipRecruiter posts all that
I
stuff,
see.
but they do it to a lot of different
I
places.
see. That's, do you have like
Um,
somebody internally that evaluates somebody and figures out like how to pick them?
yeah, so we screen with our assistant property managers in the Philippines. So we screen. Step one is there. then our regionals, or like the guys that report to me, will interview directly with that person, and we'll hire that person. Typically, we trial them on a few unit
Mm,
assignments, and we just fire quickly. And you have
okay.
to kind of fire quickly in this business. I don't think there's no easy way to hire maintenance or contractors in a smart, good way, because it's just kind of so easy to lie your way through. Um, you'll
Right.
know pretty quickly, and you just have to fire quickly, and the good people will rise to the top.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. At this point, I'm going to open it up to everybody else. I know there's people that had questions. So any questions that you have for Tom, go ahead and add it to the chat. While we're doing that, it sounds like your business is very dependent on offshore help, and it sounds like you have some mix of onshore managers as well. So how do you find the offshore folks that you're working with? Is that somebody, some team that you build? Are you working with a company?
Yeah, we work with a company. My business partner
Okay.
Ray is very adamant on this, similar to when we talked about it in the beginning. Um, you know, it's very easy to like want to throw humans at a problem. And I am like that when it comes to hiring people overseas. I'm just like, let's just hire another person, and just another one and another one and another one, $6 an hour. Like I want
Right.
five more tomorrow. Um, the issue is that like we don't have a whole built out HR team. We're like, and that's just makes it could be very make us a very clunky organization. So what we do is we hire two to three. Right now we have two to three companies that have managers that then hire more people on our behalf. So
I
it's
see.
like it's a branching, scalable system rather than us interviewing every individual, if that makes any sense.
Got it. So you can scale up, scale down as you need it.
In theory, it's not
Okay.
perfect,
Got it.
but yeah.
Understood. Okay, so I think I'm gonna just open it up to the audience. So Garrett has a question here, and I think Garrett, I'm assuming this was for Tom. I think you asked, how do you track rental property depreciation? It's a very specific question. So we're getting into the accounting world.
I track it. No, you're fine. Um, so when you pay for something, whether it's through ACH or check or whatever, out of your bank account, you record what it was for, and then you provide that bookkeeper then rolls all that up and is reconciles those every month or every quarter, and then you provide it to your CPA, and your CPA does the depreciation calculations for you.
Excellent. So yeah, I was gonna say, so with
Obviously,
Baselane,
cost segs are
yeah,
different. I don't know if he's talking
cost seg
about
is
cost
different.
segs. Yeah,
Yeah,
cost
so
seg.
regular depreciation on Baselane, when you do all the bookkeeping, it's income expense or capex, right? Cost basis capex. That stuff will go to the CPA, and then the CPA the CPAs have a software. They're not doing it themselves either manually. They usually have a pro, and I'm a former CPA, so I can tell you that they have a software they plug it into, and you can just get the calculation that way. If it's more fancy stuff like cost seg, that's a separate story. Let's see, any other questions that people have? We talked about how do you build your offshore team. What does your onshore team look like? Is there any full-time staff there, or is that just
Yeah,
you and your partner?
yeah. No, no, we're not that. That would be incredible if we could pull that off. No, we've been blessed to hire phenomenal young people out of college. And we've trained them, and we've paid for them to go to night classes at NYU, and really become great asset managers and real estate operators.
Awesome. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, you definitely could not do it all.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about the mindset. I don't see a lot of questions here. So I know we started with mindset, and as we wrap up, I want to just talk about now you're at scale. You mentioned, we're talking about 565 units, for example, that you're directly managing, and you have third-party units that you're managing. How did you get to that level, right? So, I'm assuming you started with one or two projects. And how's that process been, and what gave you the confidence to keep buying and scaling up?
It's so funny. It's almost like the inverse. It was like, how do I get to enough units to be able to hire the person that then handles this headache for me?
Right,
And
right. So you
then
had a
and then you're
motivation.
like, and then you're on the wheel and it's just going, going, going. So that was kind of, in the beginning, that was what it was. It was like, oh, if our portfolio grew by 20%, then I could like pay someone full salary to do something.
Right, 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 right.
I think it's
And
weird. It's like a lot of people start businesses, don't realize how hard it's going to be. Then they're in it, and then the only way out is through.
is to scale up. There's no, yeah, that makes sense. Um, and we skipped the whole markets discussion, but in the kind of overall technology stuff that's going on today, you talked about machine learning earlier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How are you using some of that technology
Yes.
today to
It's
run your
huge.
processes?
It's huge. It's so important, guys. It's like I'm sure everyone knows. But like the differentiators of successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses is answering that question that you just asked. So what we do and what I tell the guys to do is I say figure out a way to use it all day every day. You
Hmm.
get an OM from a broker, like figure out interesting questions that you might be able to ask, or maybe even better, how about you ask ChatGPT how it could be helpful analyzing an OM?
What is an OM for the audience, just so we can,
Offering
yeah.
memorandum. So I'm going to sell a 100-unit building. Please buy it. Right. That's just one example, right? Or you get a lease. So let's say there's a tenant complaint and it's something a little bit more high touch than it used to be. Now you have a lease for that person. Why don't you drop that lease into ChatGPT, copy and paste the message from that tenant, maybe from that tenant's attorney or that tenant's mother, and say, hey, respond nicely in a very professional way, citing the appropriate lease terms. Now, something that could have taken a person 3 hours, maybe, oh, that would have been their whole morning. It's 15 minutes and it's like the perfect response, and you're done. That's just
Yeah.
another example. It's really endless. It's really endless.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's another question here related to tenant credit reporting. So are you guys offering that to your tenants? And has that helped with collections or overall just, payment statuses?
Um, People opt in.
Okay.
I've never run an experiment of like, of the people who opt in. It's probably very self-selecting, right? Like if you're
Right.
opting in, you're probably the people paying your rent.
You're gonna pay on time. You just want to build the credit.
Correct.
I
So I
see.
don't know,
Okay.
but that being said, I have not run any. I do know it's utilized. Like and what I was shocked by, I forget the name of the company, but through our software we offer like build up equity option. So like
Mhm.
if you stay in the unit for X amount of time, you can build up equity and transfer like within the portfolio. Um, and a
Okay.
shocking amount of people opt into it. And what that does, it drives down your turnover, which is very valuable.
When you say equity, what does that mean? What is the equity
Yeah, so it's a
factor?
software basically that you as an operator have to opt into, and the tenant has to opt into. And if they're renting your unit, every rent check, they pay a little bit more money,
Hmm.
and the landlord gives a little bit of the rent check to this fund. And that fund grows. It's kind of like a rent to own, but you're not going to buy that unit. It's like you're building up
Right.
your equity to then go buy a house.
I
So it's like
see.
the longer you stay, and they'll like invest it on your behalf. It's a fintech play. It's
I
pretty cool.
see. Okay. That's interesting. Awesome. Do you remember what you're using for credit reporting? Is it one of the bigger tools or?
We use it's the integration with the software already. I don't
Oh,
know.
it's already integrated. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
I don't know.
Okay, awesome.
We opt into it, then the tenants opt into it.
Okay, that's really helpful. And I don't see a lot of other questions. So I'll ask one more question for the audience. Well, I'll go back to leasing. So it's not more about the automation, but how did you develop your lease documents that you use? I'm sure you've learned a lot about what to include, what not to include. And
Yeah.
I kind of alluded to it during the maintenance question. Like, the first time we talked, you had talked about educating people on self-maintenance and how-to videos as well. So just related to that whole thing with leasing, like, do you guys have a lawyer that prepares a lease, or how did you arrive at the lease document? And then, is there anything specific to maintenance in there?
I don't know the answer to the second part.
Okay.
The first part, we had leases that we inherited from other operators. We have local counsel in each of those markets. We had a few clauses that were in there that were pretty good in our version. And then we inherited like our attorney's lease, and why that's important to inherit your attorney's lease. Some markets have form documents, by the way, and that's 2 out of 4 of ours. But
Okay.
you want, basically what I'm saying is the attorney that's going to go represent you in court, right? The one that a lot of people do, and I recommend do, is pre-negotiate a rate, a fixed rate to do the eviction process.
Yeah.
Then you want to be using their lease because they're the ones that are using it to defend you and vice versa. So
Right. Right.
just local
Okay.
counsel in individual markets. We used for a while, Bigger Pockets had leases for each of our submarkets that were pretty good. Um,
Okay.
so
Okay. Awesome. Okay. I will ask one last question since rates just dropped yesterday, a little bit out of the blue, but what is your personal outlook, just high level
yeah.
for, the next, I don't know, 6 quarters of what's going to happen in the market since we already saw a 50 bips rate adjustment yesterday?
Yeah, I mean it's frustrating, right? So like the news comes out at 2 o'clock, the 10-year starts to drop. Then
10-year treasury, just
10-year
for
treasury,
the,
right? Which is what matters to real estate operators. Like we don't really care about the federal interest rate. What we care about is the 3-year, the 5-year, the 10-year, because that is what agency conforming loans bases their
the rates on.
loan rate to, right?
Yeah.
So Jerome Powell drops rates, and then at 2:30 he goes on and just scares everybody that no more rate drops are coming. And then the 10-year goes back up. So my rates are actually hot. My interest rates are higher today than they were yesterday.
They are, yes.
But regardless, look, I hear your point. I'm cautiously optimistic. It's like maybe we were right. A lot of the people that were buying in the last 2 years, like maybe this was a true 10-year buying opportunity. Um, it would be sad for me that if the buying opportunity was kind of over in a way and we're back to just fair weather real estate. I like the fact that there was a little distress and a little chaos in the markets for a few years. I got, in my opinion, some very good deals during that time. I think we still have a long way to go to get back to a palatable interest rate for the institutional players. But in the sub-institutional space and the higher yield space, I feel like our rates are pretty tolerable. Like if your rate starts with a 5, you're probably okay in our world if you're buying decently well. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I took definitely a breath of fresh air when the rates came down. I'm not so worried about my refis coming up, etc. And I'm a little bit excited about it being easier to raise money for real estate operators. Um, you know, Not like our phones falling off the table ringing, but
Right.
investor confidence has definitely gone up. And like people that I used to have to call a bunch are like sending me an email and saying, "Hey, how are you?" So
Yeah,
it's
that's
nice
super interesting.
shift. It's nice.
Yeah, and Candace can share with the everybody here with the link, and we'll drop it in our YouTube video too. Is that we just did a investor sentiment survey for Baselane investors. A lot of our investors are mostly in the 1 to 10 unit category, or somewhere in the 10 to 20 units. And kind of top line, what we learned was that the investor sentiment was quite positive in terms of the outlook going forward, despite whatever's been going on. So people are kind of ready and excited to get involved. Obviously, I mean, there will be certain things that happen, right? Like more competition and stuff like that. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens to prices.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a survey link and we'll drop it in the YouTube video as well. Well, Tom, I will wrap it up here. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming. This has been super helpful. I personally took about 2 pages of notes. I don't know if you guys can see, and we'll definitely share this with everybody in the recording, and we'll try to get a transcript as well and see if we can send some of the insights and a written copy for you.
Sure.
And yeah, just keep plugging in for everybody who listened to Baseline content, and we're going to continue to bring you educational content. And yeah, thank you so much to Tom again once more. Super helpful and super insightful.
Thank you guys, and good luck out there. And I hope you're able to work with great people and do some awesome deals.
Thank you so much. Take
Yep.
care.
Have a good one. Bye,
Bye.
guys.